Welcome to session 1 of Demystifying Artificial Intelligence, where we're going to talk about educator applications for this new and innovative field of technology and the consumer side of it and how it can help us. So I'm going to try something new at this course, and at this point I teach lots of different courses, and almost all of them require a long time to pull together, from the research to discover my own knowledge gaps to developing an accessible scope and sequence. And to be honest, it's very satisfying creatively, but probably hasn't been worth the investment monetarily, just because of the time sink and commitment. So for this class, I want to try something different. Something that goes hand in hand with our topic, artificial intelligence. How can AI help me with the creation and curation of content for this course? So bear with me in these first couple sessions as I try out some of the same things that we are going to explore together in this course, which happens to be educator applications for AI. When it comes to our creative processes as teachers in developing lessons plans, we have our own systems. And in fact, I have entirely different course on the art of development of quality professional development. And mine is pretty old school, my process. I like to sketch out what I already know on the topic, and then I learn about the areas where I don't feel as confident. And then I explore the usefulness of what I've learned and how I can try and provide teachers with parts of the topic that I found useful. However, for it being 2023, my process is still very analog. I sketch it out on paper, I storyboard a presentation, I edit and I refine my ideas on paper. So when I started exploring, AI in depth last summer, I started thinking about if this type of technology could improve my process at all. But also, could I trust it? And we know that as teachers, releasing control is all about, part of your classroom is all about trust. So I began with adding some prompts into my traditionally analog creative process, and these are some of the things that I tried out. I tried out saying, can you check this piece for, organization? And I said, here's some information. Can you take this style and rewrite the section using the voice that you see? I asked, is there anything missing from the work? I asked it to play devil's advocate with some of the ideas that I wanted to discuss. I asked it to expand on that train of thought. I asked it to clean up my word vomit at times, and I asked it to make it a little bit more clear. And to be honest, it's done a pretty good job at some of that. So I am going on a limb to try some of this new technology in the creation of this new course, and I hope that you will do the same. And through this course and the content that we're going to talk about, I'm going to ask us all to venture into this experiment with me, one in which we are going to hand some of the tasks we do over to AI to learn for ourselves what we find helpful or not as educators. So this week we're going to start pretty simple. We're going to prep to talk about the present by discussing quite a bit of the past. So in this session, we're going to talk about the history of AI, the timeline of information and exchange, and who our students are, because I've noticed in the last several years that our demographics and needs are changing among the students that we have in many of our classrooms. So I'm going to start off with the timeline of artificial intelligence. We're going to go way back in time to start out, though. We're going to say in the beginning, there was some Greek mythology, and the concept of AI, or AI-related ideas, goes all the way back to classical ages. Under Greek mythology, this concept of machines and mechanical men were well thought of. A good example is Talos. Talos was supposed to be this giant animated bronze warrior who was programmed to guard the island of Crete. Now, we jump quite a bit in time to some other foundations in artificial intelligence. In 1950, Alan Turing proposed this Turing test, which has since become a little bit outdated because of the technology we have. But the Turing test basically determines whether or not our computer can be intelligently thinking like a human being, and if it can trick a consumer of that content. And this Turing test was the first serious proposal in this philosophy of artificial intelligence. Then we jump ahead to 1956, and that marked the most important era for artificial intelligence because during this year, John McCarthy first coined the term AI, which was followed up by the first AI lab set up in MIT in 1959. In 1961, we have our first AI chatbot called Eliza was introduced to the world. And we jump ahead to 1997, and if you are a game fanatic like me, this is a big deal. In 97, IBM's Deep Blue beat the world champion of chess, Garry Kasparov, in the game of chess with several rematches to accompany it. And then we jump ahead a little bit more. In 2017, Google founded a lab to explore these deep learning algorithms and neural networks. So in 2017, engineers were working on something we call a transformer that would use deep learning the way our human brains do to try and solve complex problems. And the goal wasn't to create a robot, but a brain of sorts that could use language to answer bigger questions than humans could alone. So this kind of deep learning first required training. So the engineers loaded the transformer with a bunch of ideas and a bunch of data, and they hoped that the transformer would make its outputs based on their inputs. Spoiler alert, it did. And this transform excelled at sequential data. So engineers could input a question and it would respond with what it thought was the response that you wanted. Something called a self-attention mechanism made this thinking possible, and it was what allowed the transformer to take into account the context of each word in a sentence when generating new text. Then we have, in 2018, researchers at OpenAI creating a new language model called GPT-1, which actually stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And it was trained on a massive amount of text data and was able to generate coherent and contextually appropriate text in response to different prompts. And then 2022 come along, and OpenAI released a new language model called ChatGPT. This new model was designed to generate text that mimics human conversation, and it was trained on a massive data set of human-written text and learned to generate natural-sounding and engaging responses to prompts. So it showed a wide range of potential applications, including, virtual assistants, chatbots, and consumer service tools. So its ability to generate natural and contextually appropriate responses made it a powerful tool for enhancing communication and collaboration between humans and machines. Then everything changes. In November 2022, OpenAI releases ChatGPT to the world, and that's the story as we're living it right now. So by January, ChatGPT had more than 100 million active users, and we're going to be talking about the timeline, right? Because I want you to see the speed at which the world is changing. My Scholar Bowl students keep saying they're sick and tired of living through history. And after COVID, an intense era of politics, changes to the internet, changes to social media, they're kind of right. We are living through history, and it's at this blink and you'll miss it speed. But technologies are not the only thing that is changing. If you are teaching our youngest students right now, then you're educating children who will graduate from high school and college in the mid-2030s and a little bit beyond. And these same students, as adults, will work for about 50 years, and eventually the hope is that they'll retire around the year 2085. But pause for a moment and let that sink in. They will retire in 2085, in a future we can probably barely imagine. Now, many classrooms, however, fail to adequately prepare students for this future. Instead, schools, one of those systems that tends to be structured by traditional teaching methods that were popularized probably close to a century ago. And our learners are already living in a world filled with AI and continual technological advancements. So if we don't equip them to thrive in this ever-changing world, we're essentially stifling their potential. And, sure, they'll learn how to navigate this new technology eventually, probably. But imagine the possibilities if they discovered how to use it well to their educational advantage rather than trying to use it to try and skip out on learning. And for the benefit of those around them, that's worth doing. And that's also what I want for our kids. And I'm sure that you do as well as a teacher and as an educator and as a person. So it's not just AI that has been speeding the world along. This question of how do we equip students to thrive today and tomorrow, well, we start by acknowledging where we are and where we're going. So throughout history, there have been several major shifts in information and the ways that we access, store, and share it. But this is a little bit different than those. Until now, we've witnessed this gradual unfolding of technological progress. But today, as we teach, a large-scale shift is happening, and at a much faster pace than we expected. There's also no stopping it. So, we have this choice: stick our heads in the sand and hope for the best, or make the best use of the amazing innovations at our fingertips and be proactive and be ahead of the game. So we're going to take a look at some of the major shifts in the way that we access and use information that have occurred throughout human history. This development of written language first allowed people to record and share information, preserving knowledge for future generations. And then the printing press came along, and Gutenberg revolutionized the way that information was disseminated, and it enabled the mass production of books, which made ideas much more accessible and affordable. Then we jump ahead, and digital technology once again changed the way that we acquire and distribute information. So digital data ended up being stored much more efficiently than books and accessed more easily, and then shared out instantly across vast distances. Even physical libraries changed, right? Card catalogs, those have been replaced with these digital databases and search engines that allow users to find and access information quickly and easily from anywhere with an internet connection. But this did require users to learn a certain series of new skills and even forget old ones. Then there's Wikipedia. Print encyclopedias were supplanted by free online resources, which offer vast repositories of information that can be updated and edited by users in real time. And, Wikipedia brought on our first collective educational freakout. I remember going through this experience as a student, and teachers consistently said, no, no, no. Some places banned it, some places limited its use, but a couple places were innovative in the way they coach students on how to use these technologies. But, now that site is widely accepted as a place that you probably begin researching general information on a topic using. We've also had a shift from desktop computers to mobile devices, such as smartphones and tablets, and this has made information even more accessible. That excuse of we won't have a calculator in our pockets when we're adults is no longer a thing. We do. They're there. And it allows users to access the internet and digital resources on the go. Then we had this shift, this move from physical storage media like CDs and DVDs and hard drives to cloud-based storage systems. And those were solutions that enabled users to store and access data remotely, making it easier to share and collaborate on projects. Then this rise of the internet and streaming services has continued and allowed users to consume media content in a non-linear fashion. So it lets us choose what we watch, what we listen to, what we read, but more importantly, when we do it. So finally, platforms like Facebook, or formerly known as Twitter, or Instagram, or TikTok, and YouTube, they've shifted the way that we share and consume information. So user-generated content plays this significant role in shaping public discourse and opinion. And ready or not, this is where we are headed. Internet searching using AI bots, this timeline of information exchange also matches the speed of our technology. So both our systems on how we get and store and process information and the technology behind those systems are changing. But we also hinted at this idea that our students are also changing. So as technology continues to change our world, we are seeing a significant shift in our students in the way that they learn. So we are now moving from this Gen Z kids, with their 8-second attention span, to Alpha generation, a generation of learners who not only desire, but probably also demand more personalized and engaging learning experiences based on my experience. This Alpha generation includes students born after 2010, and they are sure to require us to shift our teaching and learning ideas in order to meet their needs. So this group of students sometimes challenge conventional methods and ideas, which is great for critical thinking, but could pose a challenge for traditional systems inside education. And this generation seeks, tailored learning experiences, as they are aware that easily accessible information is just a query away, right? You can use Alexa, you can use Google, you could even use what we're going to talk about with ChatGPT. This Alpha generation are characterized by a virtually seamless relationship with technology. There's been some estimations by the age of 8, they will have surpassed many of their own parents and teachers in technological skills. And this inherent connection to technology shapes their approach to learning and communication and even problem solving. So we can't continue to employ teaching strategies from 1985 in order to prepare students for a world that's a century ahead in 2085. So that's our goal in this course. How can we use technology in a way to support a transition to a different approach to education? One that hopefully addresses the opportunities before us and the changing needs of our students. And I know that sounds overly optimistic. However, we've got to start somewhere, and we'd rather be innovators than people coming to this idea when it's too late. So, looking at the story of how our world is changing, how our technology is changing, and how our students are changing, it reminds me that we must adapt and innovate to keep up. So this curiosity, my curiosity, the same curiosity that, some of my forward-thinking teachers that I had as teachers fostered in me, makes me want to know more about all sorts of things, including this topic of AI. And you're here, so I'm hoping you have some of the same great aspirations. So other courses you might have taken have you regurgitate a lot of Tier 1 information, but the questions that we discuss in these posts each session either involve critical thinking, providing personal reflection and anecdotes, or application of some of the skills that we learn. So this week is a combination of the first two of those things. So I want you to think about some of these questions before you post your response inside our discussion board. Question number 1. In order to make some comparisons to the speed of which technology is changing today, I want you to think back to your childhood. And I want you to do one of those memory walkabouts through the spaces in your memories. What did technology look like? What did it feel like? What did it sound like? Those could be cars, that could be videos, it could be phones, it could be any other devices that you saw, music devices. But what memories can you pull so that we can use that information to compare the world of today to the world that we had been accustomed growing up in? Question number 2, what notable differences are you observing that are generational differences with some of our students and your own experience as a student, especially in regard to their interaction with technology? Question number 3, since getting into teaching, how have you needed to adapt your teaching styles or your curriculum to better serve your students? What is the trend since you started in education? from where you were at the beginning to where you are now, and having to adapt to meet the needs of those students. And the final question kind of hints at something we're going to talk about in a couple of weeks, which is consider this interplay between these ideas we talked about today: artificial intelligence, rapidly changing technology, and generational shifts. And what do you think are some of the ethical considerations we're going to have to discuss along the way as we talk about implementing new technology into the classroom? I want to give you a quick outline again of the sessions we have planned. We're going to start off a little bit slow with this and some of these reflection questions, but next session we're going to talk about the fundamentals of one AI technology that has become very popular in the zeitgeist, which is ChatGPT. And we're going to tackle the art of prompt engineering, and then we're going to pick out some ideas in our own lives that we can hand over pieces of our task to see how it handles or helps or hinders those processes. Third session, we're going to talk about those ethical considerations we're going to begin reflecting on today. And we're going to go deep into some of the things that have come up so far. Session 4, we're going to practice streamlining some of our administrative tasks. Those are tasks in education that don't involve FaceTime with students, right? How can we make that easier? How can we get better at the things that we're bad at? And how can we help support the things we don't like doing, but we have to? How can we do that using AI? Session 5 involves coaching classroom use. That entails lesson planning and ideas of getting students to use some of these technologies so they become familiar with them and how to do that appropriately. And finally, session 6 is what are tools outside of ChatGPT that we can try out in other aspects of our personal and professional life. So I'm very excited for you to go on this journey with me in this course and try an adventure into this cool experiment as we try using this new idea and adopting some pieces into our career and our profession of education.